Everyone at the camp laughed when she showed up. Just a simple woman in worn-out sneakers and a backpack that had seen better days. She didn't look like much, especially not someone who could fly, let alone survive the grueling demands of a top-tier pilot training program. They didn't care about her dreams. They told her she didn't belong there. No military background, no fancy flight school, and definitely no connections. Just a face they didn't recognize and a name they didn't care to remember. So they kicked her out. But what they didn't know was that she'd been preparing for this moment her whole life. Quietly, relentlessly. Watching, reading, practicing in old simulators, and studying every manual she could get her hands on. She didn't need anyone's approval, she just needed a chance. Days later, without warning, something happened that no one at the camp would ever forget. As the trainees were running their drills, a shadow streaked across the sky. Every head turned. The noise was deafening, unmistakable, the roar of an F-22 Raptor. But no one was scheduled to fly that day. All eyes locked onto the sleek jet as it dropped lower, and then landed, clean and steady, right in the middle of their training field. The camp fell silent. When the cockpit opened, no one could believe who stepped out. Was it a stunt? A joke? How did she get access to one of the most advanced fighter jets in the world? And more importantly, how did she know how to fly it? This is the true story of how a woman the world dismissed proved everyone wrong. But her journey didn't end there, because what came next changed everything. Her name was Elena. No rank, no uniform, just a quiet presence that no one paid much attention to, until that day. The instructors scrambled, the trainees whispered, and security rushed to the scene, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The F-22 wasn't stolen. That was confirmed almost immediately. But no one could explain how she got permission to fly it, or how she pulled off a perfect landing on a field she wasn't even supposed to be near. Before she was escorted away, she said just one thing: "Asterisk, I told you I could fly." Asterisk. No one knew where she came from. Some said she had worked as a mechanic on old planes. Others claimed she once lived near an abandoned airfield where she taught herself everything from scratch. A few believed she was part of some secret program, off the books, trained in silence for a mission no one talks about. But there were no files, no records, no trail, just a past wrapped in rumors. What made it all more unsettling was how calm she seemed. While the officials argued, while the cameras rolled, and the news started to buzz with headlines like "Mystery Woman Lands Military Jet *", she just waited. She didn't fight, didn't run. It was almost like she expected this moment, like she planned it. Back at the camp, everything changed. Those who mocked her before now kept quiet. Some were afraid, others were curious. But one thing was certain: Elena had shaken something much bigger than a training program. She had touched a nerve inside a system built to keep people like her on the outside. And what nobody knew yet was that her landing wasn't the end of her story. It was only the beginning. The investigation started within hours. Military officials showed up in black SUVs, tight-lipped and tense. They weren't just worried about the F-22. They were worried about how someone like Elena had slipped through their cracks. No clearance, no documented flight hours, no affiliation with any known branch. But somehow, she had gained access to one of the most secure aircraft in the world and flown it like she'd been born in that cockpit. Behind closed doors, debates broke out. Was she a threat, an ally, or something in between? Some wanted her arrested immediately, charged with breaching national security. Others argued there was more to the story, that *maybe she had skills they couldn't ignore. And buried beneath all that noise was one question no one could answer. Who trained her? Meanwhile, back at the training camp, the recruits were restless. Among them was Ryan, a second-year trainee who had watched Elena closely from day one. He'd seen her sketching engine parts in her notebook, overheard her asking technical questions most trainees wouldn't understand. She didn't just know aircraft, she felt them. Ryan started digging quietly, asking around, watching old surveillance footage. The more he looked, the more he realized something strange. Elena had been testing them. Not just the instructors, but the entire system. At the same time, Elena sat in a holding room silent. She answered no questions, signed nothing, asked for no one. But she was listening. She knew they were afraid, not just of what she did, but of what it meant because if someone like her could master the skies without their training, without their rules, it raised a dangerous possibility. What if there were more like her? And what if this was never about flying, but about exposing something hidden? The longer Elena stayed silent, the more nervous the higher-ups became. Every hour that passed added pressure, from the media, from internal departments, and from foreign eyes that were definitely watching. Someone high up finally decided it was time to move her. Not to a courtroom, not to a base, but to a black site. Quiet, off-grid. That decision never made it to the press. But word leaked. Ryan, still watching from the sidelines, caught wind of it from a technician who wasn't supposed to talk. The moment he heard where they were taking her, he knew something was wrong. This wasn't about safety anymore. This was about erasing her, and whatever truth she might have brought with her. Ryan had a choice: stay in line and finish his training, or risk everything to find out what Elena knew. He made his choice. That night, while the camp went quiet, Ryan broke into the restricted hangar where the F-22 had been taken for inspection. What he found changed everything. The jet had been modified, not externally, but in its navigation logs. The flight path didn't start near the base like everyone assumed. It originated from a point deep in the desert, near a long-decommissioned testing site, a place that hadn't been touched in years. Or so they claimed. Meanwhile, Elena was already in transport, locked in the back of a secure convoy heading into nowhere. She didn't resist. She watched the road, counting turns, listening to the hum of the engine. She knew where they were taking her, and she wasn't surprised. Because this had all been part of her plan, not just to land a jet, not just to prove them wrong, but to lead them back to something they thought was buried for good. And now, they were almost there. Just as the convoy approached the edge of the restricted zone, a sudden transmission came through, scrambled, faint, but unmistakable. A voice, female, calm. This is Ghostbird 1. You're off course. The driver slammed the brakes. The guards looked at each other confused. There was no active call sign registered as Ghostbird 1. Not anymore. That name had been retired nearly 2 decades ago, after a classified mission had gone dark and was buried under layers of government silence. Elena looked up for the first time since the ride began. She smiled. Back at the camp, Ryan traced the old test site's coordinates and stumbled upon a sealed report hidden in a decades-old archive. It mentioned a flight program, unofficial, off the books, where a handful of pilots had been trained in isolation to push fighter jets beyond known limits. They weren't supposed to exist, and yet, one of the test names on the list stood out, *Evora*. Elena. She hadn't just taught herself to fly. She had once been part of something much more advanced, then erased from the record. In the desert, the convoy was intercepted, not by force but by precision. A drone dropped from the sky, shutting down their comms and blocking GPS. A black chopper appeared over the ridge, unmarked, fast, and clearly not from any standard unit. The guards panicked, but Elena stayed still, her hands resting in her lap like she'd been waiting for this moment all along. Suddenly, this wasn't just about a woman landing an F-22 anymore. It wasn't about breaking into a system or proving a point. Something buried had been reawakened. A secret program, long forgotten, was coming back into the light. And Elena, she wasn't the only one who survived it. She was just the first to come back. The black chopper touched down with surgical precision. The wind kicked up sand as its doors opened, revealing a figure in full flight gear, older, weathered, but sharp. He stepped out slowly, eyes locked on Elena. Ghostbird 1, he said, with something between respect and caution. You weren't supposed to come back. Elena stood without hesitation. Neither were you, she replied. The guards didn't know what to do. Their orders were clear, but this was no longer a transport mission. It was a reunion of ghosts, survivors of a program that was meant to disappear without a trace. Project Ghostbird had been buried for a reason. Those who trained in it were pushed past human limits, flying classified aircraft with experimental systems and untested tech. Some didn't survive. Others vanished. Elena had been the youngest recruit, and when the program was shut down, she refused to disappear like the rest. As the two veterans stared each other down, a second drone hovered into view, projecting a live feed from Ryan. He'd made it to the hidden test site, and inside the abandoned hangar, he found the truth: files, tapes, logs, proof that Ghostbird wasn't just real, it had been active longer than anyone knew. And Elena wasn't the only one trained to come back. Suddenly, the feed glitched. For a moment, another face flickered on screen, a woman, familiar yet different. Not Elena, another Ghostbird, and behind her, rows of aircraft that shouldn't exist. The twist hit hard. Elena wasn't here to expose the past. She was here to warn them. Someone had restarted the program without oversight. Ghostbird had returned, but not under her control. And as the desert sky darkened with the distant hum of engines, one thing became clear. This was only the beginning. The desert fell quiet again, but not for long. Within hours, a secure team arrived at the test site where Ryan waited, armed not with weapons, but with questions. They had seen the footage. They had heard the voice. Elena's warning had reached the right ears just in time. Ryan handed over the evidence he found, but not before making copies. He knew how things like this could vanish overnight. Elena, now cleared of all charges, stood at the edge of the landing field, watching the sun rise over the old hangars. What had started as one woman being dismissed and thrown out had uncovered a hidden truth buried beneath years of silence and secrecy. The truth about Project Ghostbird couldn't stay buried any longer. It had been restarted, but not by the ones who once protected it. Someone new had taken over. Someone with resources, technology, and a plan no one yet understood. Elena's return had been more than a stunt. It was a signal, a line in the sand. She didn't go back to the camp. She didn't need to. Her mission was never about proving herself to them. It was about protecting what they never saw coming. Ryan left the program not long after. He kept in touch with Elena, sometimes meeting in forgotten airfields, sometimes just sending coded messages. He had learned something bigger than flight during it all, that not all pilots wear uniforms, and not all heroes follow the rules. And somewhere, far off the radar, another Ghostbird flew through the night sky, silent, fast, and unseen. Elena had returned to the shadows, where she belonged. Because in the world above the clouds, where power hides and secrets fly, not all battles are fought in the open. And some stories are only just beginning.